So we're here with a game called Project Afterlife. I believe this game is basically about a bunch of people who are trying to bring people back from the dead so that they can learn, like, what's on the other side, or like what it's like to be dead or something. I don't know exactly. Let's just get into it then. Okay. I'm part of a team studying what happens to human consciousness after we die. Okay. What happens when we die? Where do we go? What does it feel like? Is there a heaven, a hell? We didn't know, but we wanted to. I suppose that's where everything went wrong, right out of the gate. Ooh, okay. I'm sorry if you can hear the car horn outside. We wanted to play God, or at least learn the rules of the game. To see behind the curtain for just a moment, if only so we could know what to expect when the lights went out and we said the final goodnight. It's kind of depressing. I'm telling you now, swearing to you that we never intended for things to go wrong the way that they did. Okay, tell me what happened? The people that lost their lives knew that they were what they were getting into. They signed releases, paperwork. They agreed to let us do what we did just so long as we promised to handsomely compensate their families. And we did. We held up our end of the bargain to the tune of $13 million. But things like this, they never work out the way they're meant to. I knew that. I did. I think that on some level all of us did, but the people who were funding us had no idea. So, you basically went up to people and said, hey, if we give money to your families, can we kill you and possibly bring you back to life? Yeah, okay. They wanted results. Be messy, they said, if that's what it takes. Do whatever you need to do to figure out what happens in the sequel to Life and make it snappy because the funding is running on an hourglass and that sand is slipping. So we cut corners, we pushed people in ways that, in retrospect, were irresponsible, dangerous. I could imagine. But we did it for the common good. We did it for you, for all of us, for the benefit of future generations who could look death in the eye without the horror of not knowing what came next. Yeah, I get where they're going with that. But still, the fact that they basically asked people if they could kill them and then hopefully bring them back. It was a good thing, it really was. We called it Project Afterlife. Okay, connect the diodes, please. I think that's what that says. Amanda, do we have a connection? Are we playing as Amanda? We do. Ready when you are. Okay, initiate Afterlife sequence. Oh, I'm doing things now? Okay. Okay. Subject 1, female, in her 30s, suffered catastrophic liver failure, excessive use of alcohol related. Yikes. They've been dead for 3 days. No one has ever come back after 3 days. The point was to let them taste the cold kiss of death and then tear their soul back into the land of the living long enough to give us a play-by-play of what happened while they were away. The 3-day timeline was a tricky one. Oh, so you're picking people who are already dead, but like within a time frame? Even though the corpse was dead, even though the cadaver was cold and beginning to cellularly decompose, we needed to keep it fresh enough to host a life. Don't get me wrong, the life it hosted didn't last long, but it lasted long enough. I still remember the pulse of excitement that shot through the room when the woman opened her eyes. Okay, initiating afterlife sequence. Agnes, can you hear my voice? Hey, where am I? You're with friends, safe. I wouldn't say you were friends, but okay. Do you remember the study you agreed to be a part of? Death. Death, okay. That's right, Agnes. We wanted to know what happens to the soul after death, and you agreed to take that journey in return to us. You're the first human being to have done so. Congratulations. I'm confused then. Where are these people coming from? We belong to them. That's not something you want to hear. Agnes, I'm sorry. To whom are you referring? We belong to the Forgotten. Oh, she's getting bloody now. Hold her. What comes next is worse than any hell. The machine monitoring her vitals began to beep violently, indicating levels were grossly out of range. Agnes Meg had died for the second time. Oh, okay. We had her corpse carted to the morgue for an autopsy and discovered that her brain had substantially swelled up, causing her skull to crack open. Oh! Her heart had partially ruptured in her chest. And most bizarrely of all, her vocal cords had been seared as if something had lit them aflame. Her results were ominous, to say the least, but we were intelligent enough to know that a sample size of one does not make a conclusion, and so we eagerly awaited our second subject. This one was a young girl named Charlotte. She'd been struck by a vehicle and hit in a hit and run and fallen into a coma. So, you kill someone, bring them back to life, and then watched her brain explode, her heart rupture, and her vocal cords basically become unusable completely. And your first thought is, oh well, next? Yeah, okay. Because that's totally how it works. Her parents never had an opportunity to say goodbye, and so they agreed to allow us to perform our study so long as they were there for the revival. Oh. Okay, what are you? Oh, vital signs. Can we see the vital signs? We can see the vital signs of the subject here. Okay. Output console and input console. Okay. I guess initiate afterlife sequence. Subject 2, female. A teenager was hit by a speeding vehicle. I clicked a few keys in the computer console and the machine began its mechanical song. A moment later, and the screen flashed green as it initiated its afterlife sequence. Oh my god, it's gonna happen again, isn't it? Charlotte's unmoving cadaver was filled with a myriad of chemicals and electrical pulses designed to shock her brain into functioning. The girl's feet began to twitch, then her fingertips. Her mother and father looked at one another, grasping hands as they waited for their daughter to return to them. Hopeful tears leaked from the corners of their eyes, their lips smiling silent words of affirmation as they prepared to say goodbye to their daughter. But then... It's difficult to describe the sound of Charlotte's scream. I'm hesitant to say it was human, let alone the sound of a teenage girl. It was most similar, I feel, to a drowning sheep. It was an anguished, bleating sound, one that seemed never-ending, and yet it told a terrifying story all on its own. Eventually, Charlotte's parents made the decision to pull the plug on their daughter. It was the second time they'd made the decision in a little under a week. So, but what happened to her after that? The last subject was one that stuck with me, the one that haunts me to this day, and the reason I'm writing this now, sharing this with all of you. His name was Jacob. He was sentenced to death after doing some gruesome things to some tribal villagers while traveling in South America. He'd been researching for material to a book he was writing called The Meaning of Life. He'd participated in hundreds of rituals across dozens of tribes. He'd tried everything from peyote to EMT, leveraging any drug he could get his hands on that promised psychedelic insights. Oh. Things went wrong, however, when he went on a bloody rampage during a psychotic episode. That's why he approached our small project and asked to be included. When we informed him it was only for those suffering from terminal afflictions, he asked if he could be added to the list anyway, sort of like an organ donor. We agreed. Jacob was sent to the electric chair for the following weekend. Okay, can we... Oh, so, can we... Oh, we can move around. Okay. Didn't know that. Okay, oxygen levels. Security screen. Power supply. Storage locker. So, can we go in here? We can, okay. Nurse. I don't remember her name. I think she has a thing for a lead researcher, Roger. And would this be Roger? Mark, I think his name was. Doesn't talk much, gets the job done. Okay, are you Roger? Roger. A lead researcher. He's really passionate about Project Afterlife. Okay. He was sent to the chair after killing South American tribesmen. Okay, so we can't really do anything other than push a few buttons, so guess initiate afterlife sequence. Okay, subject 3, male, nearing his 40s, was sentenced to death after killing multiple tribal villagers in South America. Once again, I watched from behind the glass. Once again, Roger waited patiently, a hopeful smile on his face. 20 seconds passed and nothing occurred. Not so much as a twitch from a toe or a flick of an eyelash. Jacob's corpse remained every bit as dead as the day we carted him in. A minute went by and we still saw no sign of resurrection. Amanda, can you check the monitors? I think it might be malfunctioning. I swallowed a triple check the machines and made sure it was functioning to specification, just as it had the last 2 times. The wires checked out, the program was running to spec, all the diodes were in the correct place. I don't see any issue here. Maybe some people can't be brought back. Have you seen it? Jacob, do you remember the study you agreed to participate in? I remember everything. I've seen too much. And what was that? What came next after you died? Everything that I feared. The nightmares were real. What do you think happens after we die, Doctor? I'm not certain. We all believe different things. I suppose we were hoping you could answer that for us, Jacob. We believe. Okay, believe what? We believe so many different things, and we so desperately want them to be true, but the only truth is that we return to the forgotten. The forgotten, it was a phrase we heard before from Agnes. I'd assumed it referred to human beings, like those who died in meaningless wars or the periods of widespread misfortune, and yet the emphasis that Jacob placed upon it. The forgotten? What are the forgotten? It was miraculous that he was standing at all, but that he remained living after several minutes was something neither of the other two subjects managed. Not what, but who. Our minds are finally made. They evolved over millennia to mask reality, to mask the bitter, bitter truth of the universe. You want to know what happens when we die? We return to the abyss that birthed us. I had a vision of the end. I saw our makers, and they were dressed in dying stars in empty space. They were hopeless, empty, but just like us, they wanted medicine, a way to feel. We are their medicine. Our minds are primed for love, joy, and for pleasure. And when we die, they feed on us. They leave our souls empty and rotting until we're rebirthed into the next human, a little less whole, a little less complete. It's getting a little dark. A little closer to putting a bullet through our skulls. Oh, okay. What else can you tell us? That we began with meaning, but as they fed, we grew emptier, more incomplete. Collectively, the human soul withered. Look around you. Do you feel the rage, the hatred, and the pain? It's consuming the human race like a plague, and bit by bit, we're getting worse, not better. Soon we'll have nothing left to feel. No love, no joy, just emptiness. Okay. Roger's mouth hung open. His voice stuttered as he attempted to formulate a response to articulate why he must be wrong. At least, that's what I had hoped for. I had hoped for anybody to stand up and say this was all a farce, and the experiment had been compromised, and none of this could be true, but nobody did. If you want to know what comes next, I can show you. Okay, then. After that, our funding was pulled, our donor abandoned the project and scrubbed his involvement from any and all corporate records. Well, I would hope so. As far as the scientific community was concerned, the experiments never occurred and the findings didn't exist. But I remember. I remember because there's simply no way I could forget the haunting look in Agnes' eyes, the hopeful agony of Charlotte's screams, or the final message that Jacob delivered in a pool of blood in the linoleum floor. It was messy and easy to miss. To the others, I think it must have looked like a common splatter, a simple side effect of his legs spasming in the pool of blood. But I know what I saw. The letters, though crooked and barely legible, were scorched into my memory like a cattle brand. They weren't so much a warning as they were words of advice, perhaps an answer to the question we set out to ask, and the question that Jacob had set out to answer in his book. The meaning of life, he wrote, is to avoid the agony of death. Huh. Well, alrighty then. That was Project Afterlife. I was not at all expecting it to do that. But wow. like, it kind of does make you think, though, like, people all over the world have all these like, different beliefs of like what they think actually happens when you die, and there's no way to tell like who's right and who's wrong. So like, it's kind of interesting, but at the same time kind of like scary. I don't know. It makes you think. But yeah, so anyways, that was Project Afterlife. It was a good game, I think. I mean, like, I was expecting to be able to, like, do a little more, but it was mostly just clicking on the one thing and then reading a bunch of stuff. But it was still a pretty good game, I think. Yeah, so I will put a link to the game down in the description along with the Discord, Twitter, and Instagram. You should check them all out. And yeah, so that's it for this one. So I'm gonna go. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.